All right. So for people listening, we have Alessandro here today, the co-founder of Spods, which is an HR tech startup based in Italy. He's bootstrapped, scaling without funding, basically, and in a space, at least in my experience, where a lot of competitors are VC backed. So we will also talk about this today. But yeah, first of all, great to talk to you today, and welcome.
Thank you very
Uh,
much, Fabian, for the introduction.
sure. I would say let's kick it off with a yeah quite intense question from the beginning.
Okay,
Like, can
let's
you
start.
take
Okay.
Yeah, I hope it's not too intense for kicking it off. But like, can you take me back to a moment where you realized that building Spots was going to cost you more than only money, like the sacrifices you made, for example? Is there like a specific moment where you realized
Yeah,
the cost
that's
behind building it?
that's a very good question actually, because this is something that if you want to go in the startup space, especially in tech, you have to face. And I would say there are a lot. There are plenty of things that you give up. And when you start, it seems everything is better than you expect. So um, your expectations are really, really high. But then at every stage, you realize that you have something to face and to overcome that you didn't expect. So the first thing I would say is knowledge. So knowledge gap. You cannot do everything as a founder, especially when the team is small. But even if the team is bigger, you don't have the experience because no schools can teach you how to do startups. Okay.
Hmm.
And so you have to give up a lot of things to get this knowledge yourself, because at the start you cannot hire people, especially if you are bootstrapped. You have to hire yourself first, and then you can even maybe some years later delegate some of this stuff. So the first part I will say is the knowledge gap, and the fact that you have to give up time for that.
Hmm.
You need to give up a lot of time, and this is not just about time, but it's about what you do in this time. So the first thing is obviously give up the silly things, maybe social media, maybe watching TV. Okay, it's something that you can still do, obviously, but it's better if you concentrate on your business. But
Was it?
this is not, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Was it something that you like noticed during your path, like you were starting Spots, and then you noticed, okay, I don't have the time to do those things in my leisure time, or was it intentionally from the beginning where you said, okay, those are the things that I have to cut in my life to become a founder, or was it more like in
Yeah,
the process?
the second one. You
Second one,
decide
okay.
to do this because you know that it's better to delay your gratification for something greater and something that truly is a passion for yourself, and a path that you know will take longer than you expect, but you don't know how much and how struggle you have to face, how many struggles. But this is just one thing. I will say that is not even the worst thing. It's even better for your health, just not lay down and watching TV and stay on the phone all the time. I would say that one of the hardest part is giving up some friendships. Sorry.
Hmm.
So you start with a mentality, you end up with a totally different mentality at the end of at the end during the path of a startup. And many people you hang out with, especially if you're not like me in a big cities. Like I work in Milan, but I'm not from Milan. Actually, many people are not a fit for what you do, so they don't understand why you're spending so much time working. What is all this about? All the technicalities, obviously, that you're passionate about, and you cannot speak with them about this. Obviously, you can hang out with them, but not so frequently as you expect.
Hmm.
So this is something that you probably will end up losing some of those friends and limiting going out with others. Okay. And another thing is that you also find other friends and other people in your journey that are more similar with you. So actually, it's something that have a time delay, and then afterwards you get other benefits from this. So it's not just a bad thing per se,
Hmm.
but also family. So your family, in my case, I try to give more time to my family. So I give up more on the friendship part, on going out, on doing weekends and going dancing and so on. Something that right now I'm getting back somewhat. But my family is something that I didn't want to miss. But at the same time, many times I cannot count them. I've worked in Easter right now, vacation, I worked until 2 a.m. Okay, so in all in every holiday, everything like disappear, especially if you're bootstrapped. I don't do so much holidays. My holidays are actually when I go for a fair or an event with my startups, and you create this ecosystem where you live it. Okay, everything you do in your startup is not work. Okay, so it's not bad, but it's something that you have to embrace and understand that you have to live up something else. And also being with your family is same thing as the friends. You will not match your mentality and what you do. They don't understand what you do, but once you get some results, they will start understanding something. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but it's also really fulfilling.
How did you navigate through the phase, especially when you're saying that like your family was like the most important part, or like the relationships that you didn't want to give up? Like how did you navigate through that phase, and how did you communicate it with them, or like how were they affected basically from your journey, besides missing you on Eastern, for example, or on public holidays?
It's not easy at the start because they fear that if you have like I did, I had a good job with a fixed income that I get every month and a good paying job. Why give up everything for something that is unknown? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the first part is always the hardest, but you have to believe in yourself. And if you have a supportive family, I think it's better. It's not always like that, and sometimes it's not my case. But you have to go against their will, and it probably will be like this. But after that, you have to try to speak and make them understand what you're doing, what you're building, and they will eventually understand what is happening. And with a wider family, not only parents but all other aspects of a family, you just have to not share too much, because sometimes it can be also feel a little bit too much for them to handle or to understand, and maybe try to chill out and try to be more less specific but still enthusiastic, because they want to see that you like what you do, obviously.
That you're on the right track, even though the track
Yeah,
is not really understandable from their side. What would you say, like when it comes to bootstrapping, especially like the tension of cash flow, for example, but also like hiring people with like not the budget of VC backed founders, for example? What would you say like is the how does this pressure actually feel like day to day when you look at
man,
you
you're
as a
touching a lot
founder?
upon it. Okay, yeah, this is this is one of the hardest parts, especially in this case if you are bootstrapped. You have limited resources, and you have to understand how to manage everything to make this work. Even if your competition, like in our case, as you said, many HR tech companies are even either founded or maybe are already big corporates. So you want to compete with them, but at the same time you want to do this without spending so much money. So you have to be smart. Okay.
Hmm.
The first thing I will say is start from the start tracking your cash flow, and especially three KPIs. So one is your monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue, if you prefer, and then your burn rate. So how much you burn every month. This is especially important, and also the default aliveness. So once you reach the fact of becoming default alive, that is something, by the way, that we reached right now, and is
Nice.
really, really good to going to this place, because before that, you know, you have to track when you will die. Okay, since now maybe I have 1, 2, 3 months of cash, and then I will die. Okay, then the company shut up.
Hmm.
But yeah, you need to understand that is normal, that you will have some months in front of you, not a whole year probably at the start. And you have to understand how much revenue you can get to get along and surpass these months. So one thing in bootstrapping is doing sales. So you have to start selling straight away. And if you have competitors that are big, huge, and competitive with you, you have to be specific. Take an angle, a niche, a specific kind of customer that you want to serve. But at the same time, right now with AI, vibe coding, and everything, you cannot be too narrow. Last year, the previous year was the mantra to be specific as possible, as specific as possible. But right now, I think it's changed. So you have to be more broad. Easy, also easier to build more stuff, and you need to create this island of product market fit, not just a single product market fit. You have to serve your customer and solve their problems. Once you get that and you get the validation, you have to go fast and sell a lot. Also market. If you don't sell, maybe you can do this inbound way. But yeah, you have to only track the cash flow and the sales pipeline every time, always. And this is the best way. Obviously, you can also take some grants and something that can help you. Also debt. I think debt is not so bad if you can manage the cash flow. It's something that you can manage. Okay.
And for you, like you said, you have 3 months from now is your runway currently, more or
No,
less.
no, no.
Like,
No, this was an example. You can have 3
an
months right
example.
now.
Okay.
I'm finally default alive, so we have all the year, and the year after we are cash positive. But before that, in January we had 3 months, and then from January we end up with some deals and everything, and we managed to have all the year and above. Yeah.
Okay, congrats to that. Like, how did your feeling change in terms of, okay, you had like those 3 months, and now you have like a bigger safety net, I'd say, or like a bigger runway, or at least like the company is alive and there's cash flow, there's enough cash flow and positive. Like, did it change something with your certainty, with your, I don't know, anxiety, or is it still the same? Like, did it change from that point on, or is it still the same like a few months ago when you had like 3 months of runway, for example?
Okay, so I realized this without even noticing, because before you track that you have a runaway that is not so long, you almost die, and you have to do things. So you focus totally on how to fix this problem, because at the end is one of the problems is not something that you cannot overcome. You just have a different problem to overcome. And so at the start was really hard, a lot of anxiety, yeah, because actually you don't have to think only about yourself. You have to think also about your employees and who work with you, your partners, and your customers at the end that you cannot left off. So it's really hard, because you understand, and this is maybe also related to one of the other questions, that you have a lot of responsibility and you have to give up a lot of things in your life to fulfill those responsibilities. And once you go default alive, you realize, oh my God, we are default alive. Okay, it's really that. Okay, but nothing changes, because you need to reinvest those money, and your cash flow, if you are a startup, should not be default alive every time. You have to invest to grow. And so now nothing changed so much, because the mentality should be always the same. So, okay, I have this money. Which portion of those money I have to invest? Which is my safety net? And how I deal with this? Because if I invest too much, if something happens, like a black swan that I didn't realize is coming, like maybe wars right now, maybe other things can impact your business. Okay, you cannot lay down and relax. You are still in an early stage phase. You are still bootstrapped, and you have to work your ass off a lot.
Would you say that this is like the cost that you had to pay and still want to pay for the next years, or do you see like in your personal horizon, okay, me as a founder, this is like a specific step or stage of a business that we will take, and from there on, for example, like the anxiety or like the fear of getting back to, oh shit, okay, we don't have enough cash flow, will disappear? Or like your, in terms of growing as well, what is like your goal with the company in terms of growth, and also the cost that you're giving day by day by having this like uncertainty, for example, when you're growing and when you're scaling?
Okay. I would say actually that it should change. Okay, and probably the first 1, 2, 3 year, maybe even 5 year, is an issue, the cash. After that, you need to look more on revenue, on margins, on expansion, and the cash flow is not a big deal. Obviously, you cannot screw up everything and hire a lot of people and invest a lot of money in software and everything. But I think in our case, we are in SaaS business. It's easier to go break even and find this place of certainty. But yeah, you have always to keep this in mind, because it's your leverage. So if you have more cash flow, you have more leverage, and you can do better investments. So you don't have to overlook this. But at the same time, yeah, I would expect next year not, but probably the year after to be more relaxed on this and focus more on the revenue part and the margin part and the price optimization. And I can't wait to get and reach this moment.
What would you say is like the hidden advantage of bootstrapping when you're going through, you're scaling the company, you're successful from the early stage? Yeah, what is the advantage of being bootstrapped in your opinion?
Okay, so you have to create your advantage, because obviously you have to compete and you have less resources, limited resources. But I think this is an advantage per se, because I've spoken with a lot of other startups that raised, and you have a few limitations when you raise. The first is that if you raise from a venture capitalist or from an angel or somewhat, you have to, in some way, you depend from them. Okay, they set the KPIs, they set the pace. You have an obligation with them, and when you are bootstrapped, you are free. So you decide your own roadmap, your own timing. If you have to slow down, you can do this. If you have to refactor the whole code of the software like we are doing right now, you can do this. And this is a real advantage, because you know better than everyone else what you need to do, what you need to build, and how you need to move.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing is that, given the fact that you have limited resources, you need to be smart in finding different ways, thinking outside of the box, how to overcome challenges. In the other way, if you are instead founder backed, you have a lot of money, you have the urgency of spending those money because they want to see that you invest those money. And many times you spend those money too early. You spend too much money. You don't have the time to set the roots of your business, and you make poor decisions. And once you hire the wrong people, the wrong hire, the wrong software, I don't know, you create a problem in your company that you have to overcome. So you have different debts. When you in our case, when you are bootstrapped, you have the money debt, okay, and this is a huge one because company dies for it. But you don't have other kind of debts. You don't have maybe the code debts. Maybe you don't have debts with people that you hire that are not a good one. So you have always some kind of debts. And in every case, in every situation, you have to understand which kind of leverage is better for you in this moment.
Okay, and you decided based on that, okay, this is the way we want to go,
Right
want to
now, yeah.
stay.
I
Okay,
don't
nice.
know if something that will last forever. Probably we'll raise at some point, but we want to do this with the good metrics, with the right percentage, the right dilution. And we really also believe in investing in people in your business more than investors in the early stage, because you want to create a company that works, not only a product, not only a problem that you solve, but also the company that can scale always and be scalable and repeatable. So then when you hire, when you raise, maybe it's something that is necessary, because maybe you have to expand, you have to grow, and it's maybe more needed.
Mm-hmm. Alessandro, last question before we go
Yeah.
into the rapid fire questions. Going back to what it costs you to build a company, or what it costs you to build a company like bootstrapping company, like what would you say in terms of founder loneliness? Did you feel it? Like, did you go through it? Like, how did you tackle like doing decisions by yourself, for example, or being alone
Okay.
with decisions?
So I think the role of a CEO is always taking the bad decisions. So try to understand which is the trade-off that you have to do. There are no good decision. I think the good or bad decision doesn't exist. The only thing is that if you don't decide fast enough, you lose your competitive advantage as a startup, and it is daunting. It's really hard to do this and deal with this. I'm not someone that has all the truth in his mind, and every time I have to think through everything. But it's pretty lonely, because it's something that you have to do. But on the other side, I have co-founders that understand me and follow my path, and I can share and be transparent with them and understand what are their point of view. And this is pretty important. But aside from this, is also the support group that you can create in a larger community. So the startup world has one good thing, is that it's pretty connected. You have a lot of people that are struggling like you, and you can learn something from them, and they can learn something from you. And also what you are doing, Fabiano, is actually this, creating community and the opportunity of sharing thoughts and experiences. And also we are in accelerator, and also having this kind of community around you in a co-working is something that really helps you. So yeah, you will always be alone, but at the same time, there are a lot of people that are alone like you, and you can be together with them.
To be less alone and to have some support for the big decisions, or at least some mental support. Okay, nice, Alessandro. Thanks for the deep dive in terms of what it costs you to build a startup. We have some rapid fire questions for the last 2 minutes. Are you ready for them? So the rules are just like one sentence or one word, and very spontaneous. So let's kick it off with the first question. If you had to start your business again with only 500 euros, what's the first thing that you'd spend it on?
500 euros.
500 euros, and you can spend it on one thing. What would you choose?
Okay, let me think. Skills. Learn something. Learn sales, probably.
Learn sales, okay. What's the most overrated startup growth hack?
Overrated? That's a good one. Raising.
What's one unusual habit that you might have to stay sane as a founder, or to stay calm in like busy periods, or when you're struggling? Like, do you have a habit to keep the balance?
Okay, right now, reminding myself that is a long game, not something that plays shorts. And maybe I add also on right now working out, so getting out of my mind and into my body.
Nice. What's like a business that you'd love to build if Spots didn't exist?
Okay, aside from Spods,
Yeah.
okay, something to help other people, or the environment, something more vocational, something that we probably do.
Okay. Worst piece of advice you ever received?
Worst?
The worst piece of advice that you have ever received,
Oh,
if there is
that's
one.
hard. Okay.
That's a tough one, actually.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah.
Otherwise, we can also come back to it. And the last one would be like, finish the sentence. Building a business is like.
Okay, it's like driving. Okay, diving through to the hill by building your parachute. Meanwhile, you're going down.
Oh wow! Okay, nice. That's a good one. All right. Do you have a bad advice? Otherwise, we will wrap it up.
Yeah, the bad advice is probably taking the shortcuts. So following the trends. Okay, right now is AI. Before there was an NFTs. Following those trends only because it's something that many people are doing is the worst advice. You have to play the long term and be focused.
Nice. That's a good one. All right, Alessandro. Thanks for taking the time. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for sharing your story and your vulnerability. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Fabiano. Appreciate it.